Hello and welcome to Americans Talk Australian Survivor. I'm Rachel.
I'm Leah.
And I'm Matt.
Thanks for joining us. There will be spoilers ahead to episode 3 of Australian Survivor Rebels vs. Titans, so if you haven't watched, pause now and come back later. Before we jump into the episode, though, we did want to take a minute to thank our dedicated listeners. Alice has reached out recently as a new listener. We also have Kenzie, who's been a great listener from the start. We appreciate you guys always letting us know your thoughts and being great listeners. Also, someone from post-production of Australian Survivor reached out and said that they listen and enjoy our conversations. We really appreciate that someone from the show is actually listening. That's pretty cool. And we appreciate everyone out there who's listening to us. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening.
So let's get into this week's episode, or tonight's episode. So we open up on the Titans camp, and we see Eden talking about the last few votes. So he has now controlled the last 2 votes of Frankie and Jess, but he is a little bit concerned that his name was written down last night.
Yeah, he did seem concerned, and he was worried about it, but he seemed to get over it pretty easily. But he did say that, he's going to go after anybody who votes for him, which doesn't always turn out to be the best game plan, as we've seen in the past.
And what I think is funny, he came up with the name of the Middle Aged Mafia. So that's a pretty good name. And who is part of the Middle Aged Mafia? It's Kitty, Caroline, Mark, and Eden.
So that's a fun little name for them. I think that's always nice when you have a good ring to an alliance name.
It's fun.
Makes the audience care a little bit more.
Right.
So then we transition over to the Rebels side of the island, and we see some of the funky bunch, as PETA calls them. That would be Kelly and Raymond having fun, giggling, sharing shirts. We see Kelly suggest that they play Twister. It looks like they're just having a great time enjoying life on the beach.
It's getting on everybody's nerves.
Kelly,
it turns out.
It seems like everyone thinks they're loud, but they're living life and having a good time.
Like I've said before, she's just having fun, going up to the edge, right?
Right. And then we meet someone, Kirby. We really haven't met Kirby before, and I think she seems pretty cool. So she said that PETA is calling the shots, and then she named the Cuddle Crew.
Yeah, so PETA, Alex, Tobias, and Sarah, who we had kind of heard were a foursome yesterday's episode. We now hear Kirby deem them the Cuddle Crew because they're always cuddling. And we saw that later in the episode. They were all sitting really close to each other on the beach. So I guess they are cuddlers.
It was an odd way that they were sitting, like, behind each other. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't sitting in a circle or a square or...
Well, it was very intimate.
I guess,
right?
But kind of behind.
Well, hence the name, the Cuddle Crew.
All right.
So anyway, that was kind of a weird dynamic, but Kirby seems like a really interesting player who we met this evening. So she is a coach, but she doesn't want to tell anyone that she's a coach because she's always thinking ahead. And that kind of surprised me because I do see how being a coach could be an advantage in the game of Survivor, but I don't necessarily see it as something that you have to hide. We know a lot of people hide their professions, like Kelly being a psychologist and other people being, like analysts, things like that. Would you guys hide your profession if you were a coach?
I don't think so. I guess a coach just kind of like gets the team to work together and sees people's strengths and weaknesses. But I don't see that as a negative so much unless you start coaching people.
No,
and you come out and start coaching them, then they're going to say that you're trying to control me. I'm not going to keep you around.
I think she's thinking as a coach, as you just stated, she can define the strengths and the weakness. So she is saying she doesn't want people to know that because they see that she can look at them and see things about them, right? No,
Right.
like kind of like a psychologist, right? So anyway, I like her. She's kind of like Mark, poker face. She's, not telling anybody what's going on, but she's telling the camera, which I really appreciate. I like her a lot.
A little under the radar.
Yeah, she mentioned that you have to look out for the quiet ones, and it was interesting because it's been 2 episodes now that we haven't heard from her, but she definitely played a pretty good role in tonight's episode. So then we move on to the reward challenge. So this is a challenge that some of us may not have liked to see.
No, it's horrible.
It was quite violent. So the players are in a cage and it's 2 and 2. So they're paired up, 1 Titan and 1 Rebel, and then on the opposite side of the cage, another Titan and a Rebel. And
the cage is in the water.
The cage in the water. Yeah, then they have to climb up. The goal is to climb up the edge of the cage and jump over into the water, and that's how you score a point. So we saw a lot of physical contact, people holding each other down, ripping them off the wall. It was pretty intense. So we saw the Titans do pretty well, as we suspected that they would.
Right. Viola won the first round.
Yeah, and boy, when she decided to go up that rope,
Climb up the rope.
she went like
Well, she's
crazy. She just ran up
she's
there. So
very
great
physical.
job.
Yeah,
I know,
I mean,
but it was incredible how
she's in
fast she
great
did.
shape. Yeah.
So there you go. The first one goes to the Titans.
Then the second round, we have the Battle of the Speedos, as Jonathan says. So we've got everyone coming in their Speedos, and we see Jaden come in. And Jaden, I think, would be very scary to go up against this challenge because he just held on and you just cannot get free from him, it looks like. So Nathan took the second win for the Titans in this round. And then on to the third match.
Oh, before that, I want to say Raymond said the four men battled it out. They all, which I thought was very nice, that they all seemed to talk to each other and whatever. I just thought that was nice. But Raymond said that is going to be an alliance at the merge. So I'm just thinking, oh, how nice. But Raymond's looking ahead at the game, thinking, oh, maybe these very athletic people are going to become an alliance.
Right. They have something in common, so
Right.
let's stick together when the time comes for us to be together.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that becoming an alliance, those four. So then we move on to the third section of the challenge. We have Kelly and Aileen versus Caroline and Valeria. And we see Aileen pull out a win for the Rebels, the first one this episode of the Rebels to make it over the net. So good job, Aileen.
Yeah.
Right. So that was 2-1, 2 Titans, 1 Rebel.
Yeah, she did a great job.
And then in the fourth section of the reward challenge, we see the Titans come out victorious. So we saw Mark and Winna go up against Raymond and who else was it? Ferris. And Mark just ran across the cage and he jumped up so fast, Raymond didn't even get the chance to touch him. He was so fast.
Right.
It's
It's like
crazy.
Raymond wasn't even like ready or something. I don't know how he got away that quickly, but he wasn't even touched the whole time. He ran across the other side, climbed up, and won.
And then it was fun to see Mark hanging off the edge of the pole at the top before he jumped into the water, kind of celebrating his win. So that was fun to see him there. So then the Rebels win the reward, and it's a bucket of food. So they get back to camp, and they get to open up their reward, and it's all just canned goods. So it's a little bit disappointing to see. As a viewer, you're ready to see this fun, lavish reward, and it's just a bunch of cans.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of disappointing. But I thought the gold can would have some kind of idle clue.
Right.
It appeared not to have it.
And there were 2 cans that had like a key. Like the one was the metal gray can with spam in it, and then there was another gold can with a gold key on it. But I don't even think they showed us what was in that one. But to me, it just seems like they should have made like a buffet or a smorgasbord, and everybody got to have a couple of peaches, a piece of spam, or whatever else was in there. Instead of everyone, they all just kind of like just took one can, and that was it. And it's just kind of disappointing. Like, you get a can of potatoes.
Anything out of the can is disappointing, right?
Right, but maybe...
The whole reward was disappointing.
Right, but maybe a little bit of each bad food instead of a whole can of one bad food.
I think it might just be difficult to split with so many people. They
Sure.
have 10 people on their tribe right now, and so to split each can 10 ways, it's,
Right, no plates, no utensils.
yeah, too complicated. But a disappointing reward.
So later on, we see Jaden and Nathan in the water, and Jaden says that maybe they can use Nathan can use his body to get people at the merge, and that conversation began because after the reward challenge, Kelly was asking Nathan if he's single, and so they saw, oh, Kelly's gravitating towards Nathan, probably because he's such a nice looking guy, and so Jaden's saying use that to your advantage.
Yeah, so good news for the Rebel tribe, but Nathan is single.
Yeah.
And Kelly was asking if maybe they could kind of swim over for the night or if they could figure something out. And it looks like Jonathan wasn't totally into it.
No.
So we don't know what's happening there. But yeah, so it does seem like Kelly's bringing a lot of fun to the tribe. She said it was their conversation all night was if whether or not Nathan was single. So it seems like they're having fun on the Rebels, even if the Cuddle Crew doesn't agree. But yeah, so Nathan and Jaden are already thinking ahead to the merge. We're going to use his singleness to gravitate with the Rebels. So an interesting strategy, one that we haven't seen before.
So then it goes back to Alex and PETA. PETA's speaking, and PETA says there's a Barbie and Ken alliance.
Yeah, so PETA said that this name just kind of like came to them. And so I don't know, are there people calling them Barbie and Ken, or did they name
I think she just made that up.
Yeah, probably. She just made it up. But the interesting thing is that she found an idol. PETA found an idol, so that's wonderful.
Right near the watering hole. I mean, it didn't seem like it was very far away, just like up in a tree, and it didn't seem like much of a challenge.
Yeah, so she just kind of mentioned, I haven't really been looking, and then kind of looked, and then, here it is.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it was pretty impressive that she just kind of found it. She was looking, but not like really looking. So very impressive for PETA to be the first idol owner on the Rebels tribe. And once I was seeing her more, I could kind of see a little bit of the bone structure similar to Margot Robbie and the Barbie movie that came out this summer. So I think, is she Australian as well? So maybe that's where they were. I don't remember exactly, but maybe that's where they were getting the Barbie and Ken vibe from. But anyway,
and they were at the beach, Alex, PETA, Tobias, and Sarah.
The Cuddle Crew.
Yeah, the Cuddle Crew.
and their weird little cuddle.
Yeah, and they're saying, maybe we should throw the challenge. Because they don't like Kelly.
We all know that's just not a good thing. It never works out well, throwing the challenge.
I remember Henry did that in past seasons, and it just doesn't work.
Right. Or your team can't lose because the other team's so bad, or it just comes back and you just don't look like you're playing the game. You might as well win. If you have the opportunity to win in this game, you might as well win.
Well, it's a waste. It's a waste of the show. I mean, if you're on Survivor, try to win. End of story. You shouldn't be throwing anything.
Right. So then your group throws it, and then you get voted off only because your coworkers or your teammates. Yeah.
And it seems like every single time we see someone throw a challenge, it always backfires. And I feel like we've talked about this on the podcast before. So I know we thanked a lot of people at the beginning, but there's 4 people we can say for certain did not listen to the podcast before they went on the show. And that's the Cuddle Crew, because they're all totally on board with throwing the challenge because they dislike Kelly that much, which just seems like very bad gameplay to let your personal feelings towards another player impact your ability to actually play the game. You're really just kind of giving up at that point.
Right. And then they go to the immunity challenge.
And so this was a really intense challenge. So they had these massive blocks.
Sled.
Yeah, like a sled that each team had to push. And it looked like they were really using all their strength to push it. And they go over a couple humps, and then they have to run up and grab a machete. They have to cut down a bunch of bags, keep pushing their sled. And then eventually they get to a slingshot. They have to knock down boxes and then make a puzzle. So it's a really long challenge. And there's a lot of ways that you could throw it when you look at it from that perspective. So we see the Titans and all of their strength pushing and pushing. Yeah, so we see really strong players on the Titans, like Viola, Jaden. Everyone's really strong. Yes. They're using like all their might to push this sled. And they're doing pretty well. They're like moving at a decent pace.
Right.
And we see the Rebels just not moving at all. So they were a little obvious in their ability to throw the challenge. We saw Alex in the back, and you could see he's like standing up. He's like not even pushing.
Right, laughing.
And Garrick noticed.
Right.
Yeah, he turned around kind of like a dad in the front of a van and said, "What's going on? Why aren't we pushing? Let's get it together." So Garrick definitely, ears were raised at that first little hump.
And Raymond noticed too that the team wasn't
wrong.
Yeah, something was amiss, right?
Yeah, so they finally get it together and start pushing, but they're pretty slow. And then finally,
remember when they were hitting the balls? Who would need Alex?
Yeah, I think it was or was it Tobias?
Oh, Tobias.
I think it was Tobias who had originally said, "Let's throw the challenge." He was trying to do the slingshot and just not even close getting the ball.
Right,
and
just dropping them.
Yeah, and so of course, some people aren't going to be the best at a slingshot, but you have to at least pretend, at least get one hit before you start just dropping.
And Garrick became upset again.
Yeah, and I think he even said to Raymond at that point, like, something's not right.
And then who came?
Then Kirby
Yeah, Kirby came on.
subbed in. She was able to knock down everything, no problem. So nice to see someone trying in the challenge for once on the Rebels.
It made it look like she did it without much of an issue. Right. But had they been pushing in the beginning, they would have been miles
Probably.
ahead.
Yeah. So finally, everyone's got their pieces knocked down and we're doing the puzzle. So on the Titan side, we see Eden and Charles working really fast at the puzzle. It's just a picture of the Australian Survivor logo, so it's not as complicated as other puzzles that we've seen. And then who's making the puzzle for the other side? I think it was, no, I can't remember. But the other side's working really fast, and before they get too far, Eden says, "We got it. Come on over, Jeff." And they start celebrating. And mid-celebration, Jonathan says, "Not quite."
Right. They just missed it, and they're searching and couldn't find it. And
meanwhile,
I'm not sure.
Kirby on the other team saw immediately what was wrong. And it was such a small detail. I can't understand how she found it.
Yeah, it was really difficult to see, even as a viewer when they zoomed in. The very tip of the flame was like flipped around on the cube. So it was supposed to be on one side a yellow flame and the very tip was blue. And then on the opposite side, it was the opposite color. So hard to see from like the other side of the challenge. So
good job, Kirby, for seeing that. I don't know how you did, but excellent job. But anyway, it took Eden and Charles a long time to see it. And meanwhile, the Rebels are really doing a great job of putting that puzzle together. And I thought they might win it.
They might come back and win it.
But
it came down to a couple of blocks, and Eden and Charles won.
Right. So Titans won. They were very, very excited.
It was their first immunity challenge win. So that must be a huge weight off their shoulders to be able to go back to camp and know that they're not at Trifle tonight. So congratulations to the Titans, even though the Rebels kind of threw it. And it still was a great effort by them.
Right.
Sure.
So we get back to the Rebel camp, and Alex and Tobias, they're smiling, they're laughing, they're just having a great time. Even during the challenge, like during the puzzle, they were laughing, they were totally happy. But we get back to camp, and everyone says, "Okay, well, it's Kelly." And we see everyone at the watering center, and I think it was PETA said, "Well, what are we thinking? How about Kelly? But, someone should talk to her." And Raymond says, "Oh, I'll go talk to her. Don't worry." He runs off, and immediately after he leaves, they say, "Okay, we'll also split the votes on Raymond."
Right. As soon as he's gone, he gets half the votes just in case there's an idol played.
Yeah, so that's too bad to see Raymond. I think we all knew that he was really working with Kelly, but to see him kind of like offer to help the group, and then they immediately turn on him.
Push him under the bus as soon as he leaves.
Yeah, like 5 seconds later. So that was too bad to see that Raymond's not very valued in this group.
Well, we knew that, right? From the beginning. For some reason, they don't like Lisa or Kelly and
Raymond, yeah.
Right, I don't, it's sad. Always sad to see this, how these things happen. Well, but anyway, so Garrett is talking to his buddies, and he says, the Cuddling Club threw the challenge. So he knew that they threw the challenge.
Right. And Ferris understood that. Yeah. That's who he was talking.
I just think it's funny how he's saying the Cuddling
Crew.
Yeah. So they decide club. So then they decide to speak to others, and
so they decide, let's take down the Cuddling Crew. They decide that PETA is the most confident in the group. She really thinks that she's running the show. She's very arrogant, as Kirby puts it, and they think that she would be an appropriate target tonight. So everyone gets talking, and they say, okay, instead of Kelly, we're going to put the votes on PETA. But no one say anything at all, because if they have an idol and they know who we're putting votes on, it's game over, Kelly goes home. This was a very difficult concept for Kelly to take hold of. She was very nervous. She kept saying she wasn't nervous, but she really looked very nervous about this vote.
Well, she said she was stressed.
Yeah.
She said she's crying, and she went on to do a meditation on the beach. Then she called Scott to come help her calm down. And then meanwhile, everyone's worried, is she going to be, tell everybody what's going on? And PETA will use idol if she has one.
Then we go to cutaways. Everyone's looking with big eyes at her and wondering, what's wrong, or is she going to say the wrong thing?
But in the end, appears
Right.
that she did not say a word.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Kelly said to the camera that she's going to attempt method acting to kind of give off a stressed impression. I wonder how much of it was acting, how much of it was genuine stress. But
Well, I find it ironic that PETA found the idol, and of the 4 people, they decide PETA is the
Yeah.
one to go home. That's quite a coincidence. So that they would pick her,
Right.
and that she found it, and yeah,
Well, I thought another good soundbite was Kirby said PETA's the only person who would miss PETA would be Alex because he would be cold.
yes, that's
I
a
thought
funny
that was
line.
very funny. Kirby comes out again.
and so they're a little bit worried about Alex missing his cuddle partner, but not terribly worried about the loss of PETA. So it's interesting that they did choose PETA. I think that Alex and Tobias I see as strength to the tribe. So I see why they wouldn't want to immediately target those 2. Sarah, though, seems also strong, but not much stronger than PETA. I don't know. So it was interesting that they chose PETA rather than Sarah.
I don't know. I think Sarah's tougher. She's a fire woman.
That's true, yeah. She also doesn't seem to be as talkative and outward
Yeah.
about being kind of the leader as PETA does.
Yes. And then I thought it was interesting because it looked like Kirby was going with Ferris and everybody, but she brings in
Rihanna.
and they talk and she said, no, we have to vote with the Cuddle Crew because we don't want them to lose our trust. But I don't understand that because now there'd only be 3 of them. So why would she care?
So I think what's happening here is that you always want to play both sides as long as you can. And that's a dangerous road because at some point it becomes to a point where you have to choose a side. And Kirby seems to be thinking that now is not the time to choose a side because they realize that with the numbers, with the Cuddle Crew splitting the vote on Kelly and Raymond, Kirby and Rihanna can vote with the Cuddle Crew while knowing that PETA is the one going home. So that way when they get back to camp, their trust is, still there, and they'll know who the Cuddle Crew is voting for next and what they're thinking without kind of giving up that connection.
Right, a double agent, right? Standard double agent. So they're playing the other side, and it's only going to last 1 or 2 more votes,
Right.
but they at least got that much farther with the other side. And you can also look like a hero, right? When it comes down to the end,
Sure.
and you're one of the final 2 or 3, you can say, well, early on, I was playing both sides. Playing.
Did George play both sides at one point?
I think so.
Probably.
Yeah,
Seems
I
like
think
he
he did,
did.
yeah.
too. Yeah, so it's interesting because I see the benefit in some way, but at the same time, you would think that once all of the Cuddle Crew gets taken out of the game, when it comes down to Kirby, Rihanna, and the rest of the group, it seems like you would view Rihanna and Kirby as the natural bottom because they were almost like the last to flip.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they're putting themselves in a precarious situation. So
Unless, you know how people change constantly. People you think are all on their way out at one tribal council sometimes stay alive, like Emily, we'll bring her up again, and then they stay until the end. So things just are so fluid, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly fluid on the beaches.
So maybe Kirby and Rihanna are just thinking, let's keep as many friends as we can.
Right.
Okay.
And if those 2 stay together, you never know. Maybe somebody else comes along and joins their smaller alliance,
Yeah.
right? And they're part of the big alliance, but they have a small alliance within, maybe.
Yeah. Who
Well,
knows?
either way, the show was great tonight. I loved it. I thought it was a very interesting episode.
Well, at the tribal, it was interesting because we kept thinking that Kelly was going to say something to blow the whole thing
Oh, yes.
and say something about PETA. But
What about Ferris?
he
I don't know
seemed
why
like he was
Ferris
giving it
there.
away
Why
too.
was he
Yeah.
talking so much, and he had that huge smile on his face.
Right, saying,
Like, no, get that smile off your
Right.
face. Stop talking.
someone who thinks they know how the votes are going will be surprised or
Right,
something.
right.
Like,
Yeah, Ferris is not good at keeping a secret, I think, is what we learned at this tribal council. We saw him just like practically laughing the entire time, it seemed like. He was just like biting his tongue, it seemed like, to stop from saying, PETA's going home, basically, because he was saying, like, well, you never know what it's going to be. Someone needs to be put in their place. And you're thinking, well, Kelly doesn't need to be put in her place because she already knows that she's at the
Right.
bottom. So someone else is being put in their place. So who could that be?
Right.
Right.
And you saw the reactions. Alex had like a word, like, what's going on? But I have to say, I said that Ferris had a big smile on his face, but he is called the smiling assassin. So I guess his smile is part of his personality.
Self-titled Smiling Assassin. But
He was going to finish what King George couldn't do.
so he didn't have King George's touch of controlling the tribal council, but he still got the job done. But yeah, it's very interesting to see how it seemed like, based on his comments, Alex kind of said something about like, well, if you're feeling a little uneasy, you should probably play an idol, kind of hinting towards
Right.
PETA, play your idol. And then Ferris jumped back in and said, oh, no, it's only the first one. No one has to play an idol. Like, don't worry about it.
Right.
And you're thinking, well, why are you saying that? You're talking them into it. I would think, from my perspective, if I were PETA, I would say, well, why are you arguing so much?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
so it was interesting, tribal council. And then in the end, PETA went home.
Yeah, so all the votes were exactly where we expected them to be going in. So Kirby and Rihanna voted with the Cuddle group to split votes on Kelly and Raymond, and everyone else voted for PETA, who did not play an idol. And PETA was the first member of the Rebels tribe to go home. So
Right.
it was an exciting blindside. I wish we would have not known quite as many votes going into it. We really knew how everyone voted in the end. So I guess the big mystery was just if PETA was going to play the idol. But I think it's fun when you just have no idea where the votes are going
Right.
to land.
You mean with the talking, or when you actually see them voting in the voting booth?
Oh, I meant going into tribal. I felt like
Okay,
I knew what
right.
everyone was going to write down.
Right. But sometimes you just get tricked,
Yeah.
right?
That's
you know,
true.
you
That's
think
true.
you think you know what's going to happen, and then you're like, oh, never saw that coming.
But this time, it really
Yeah,
looked.
what we did. Yeah. Right.
But congratulations to PETA for being on the show. She certainly has a nice personality and,
Right. And she seemed to take it fine. Like she didn't
Yeah.
seem to be like, oh, boo-hoo, I'm going home.
Yeah,
Right.
she had a very gracious exit. She said, well, I guess I should have, played the idol. So she had a good attitude about it, which is always nice to see. And she had a good start. That's just how the cards unfolded. So it will be interesting to see what the future of the Cuddle Crew happens and how cold Alex ends up being.
yeah, right.
Hopefully Kirby can throw him a sweatshirt or something.
Well, I think PETA might be brought back at another Survivor season.
You think so?
Maybe. I don't know. For some reason, I just have a feeling that the producers probably liked her.
I don't know. It's hard to imagine someone voted out pre-merge coming back. You don't have to do that.
That's true.
But you never know. Well, this was another great episode, a great first week of Titans versus Rebels.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining us on this journey, and we will be back on Sunday. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at ATA Survivor, TikTok at ATA Survivor, and you can send us an email at AtAustralianSurvivor@gmail.com, or give us a phone call and leave a voicemail at 475-4podcast. Let us know if you would have played your idol if you were PETA, what you thought about what everyone was saying at Tribal Council. Do you think it was just editing, or would you have been nervous hearing what Ferris said? And we can't wait to talk to you guys again on Sunday. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.